sessions so that what we do is we slice them all up and put them onto YouTube, onto the group. So I think Aaron started that. So that's awesome. Thank you very much. So what I'm going to do is hand over to Nigel, who will do a quick introduction of himself, and then he's going to talk around Windows Virtual Desktop, high level, and then go into some demos as well. So whether they work or not is going to be.
Oh shit! That's spin up my VMs.
So on that note, am I all right to hand over to you, Nigel?
Yeah, just let me get these VMs up. Actually, I forgot all about that demo. How long have I got?
I don't know. How long's a piece of string? How long do you need?
I can go all night, mate. I think you need to put a hard shut on it, or I'll just.
I know.
I'll get into my own.
I don't know. Say 20 minutes, half an hour. Is that right with you?
That works for me. Yeah.
Cool.
I can minimize my deck. So just a normal Teams meeting to share my deck, share my screen, and quicker.
Yeah, like go for it, mate. Go for it.
Okay. So, starting. Tell me when I'm on. I'll get my deck ready. Hang on. Deck is ready. Yeah, I think I'm good.
Yeah, well, over to you, mate. I don't think you're sharing anything at the moment.
Oh, right. Okay. So who's on? Is it just us that are in the chat?
No, there's everybody, and we're all good to go to listen to talk about Windows Virtual Desktop.
Okay, let's do this. So I'm going to share my screen first of all.
Go for it.
Let me close some of these. Close. Sorry. Okay, good. And sharing said deck. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
So I want to do this in presentation mode, like that.
There you go.
Still see my screen?
Yeah, it's in presentation mode now.
Presentation mode. Okay, so you just see the full screen, right?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. So tell me when I'm ready to go, and I'll just start waffling.
Crack on, mate. Go for it.
Okay. So hello and welcome, everybody, whoever's listening. So I'm Nigel Mullings. I am a cloud solutions architect. I focus on Microsoft Azure, Microsoft's public cloud, and I work at Ingram Micro Cloud. And today I've been invited to this event to talk to you about Windows Virtual Desktop. So I'm going to run through a bit of a deck that I've put together to basically give you a high-level overview of the service and show you some of the new features. There's been a new update to Windows Virtual Desktop, which is Microsoft's VDI solution, desktops in the cloud. And I'm going to run through those updates with you. So let's just dive in. So for the agenda, what I'm going to do is just cover off some of the items on here. For Ingram, we normally do these webinars regularly. And in previous webinars, we would split a window. We've done this previously in the 2020 Spring Update webinar. We normally would split it into two parts. So this demo that we're doing today is basically a really high level. It's classed as a L100 overview of the service, so a really high level. And for the agenda today, I'm basically going to cover off remote working with Windows Virtual Desktop, enabling remote secure working, which is top of mind for a lot of CEOs during the current pandemic. I'll also be discussing the challenges during these uncertain times, and I'll run through the architecture of Windows Virtual Desktop Service and have a look at an enterprise architecture for Windows Virtual Desktop, so what that might look like for an enterprise organization. I've got a couple of short demos showing the end user experience, how a user logs onto the service and uses the service, how to create host pools. And yeah, I'll run through that with you. And as you can see, some bits on there, cost saving, security, and a couple of the new features. So Microsoft have made some huge improvements to Windows Virtual Desktop with the 2020 Spring Update. Remote working is becoming almost the norm nowadays, and Microsoft's Windows Virtual Desktop service is enabling remote working for thousands of customers around the world. And this new graphical user interface for the service enables customers to quickly deploy Windows 10 multi-session host pools in minutes. And we'll have a look at how you do that shortly. So this is an overview of the Windows Virtual Desktop usage over the last year since Microsoft released the service. The Windows Virtual Desktop optimizations on this slide, which are the blue squares, the light blue squares, have been added in the last year due to the dramatic increase in the service. The service metadata, which is the platform as a service part of the solution, which Microsoft manage. So this is going to be available in more regions, starting with Europe later this year. There's a new update due out next month. Microsoft also used Windows Virtual Desktop to enable remote engineering and support remote internships and empower new employees to onboard prior to receiving the new laptops, for example. So when we talk to partners about moving to the cloud, there are a few things that come up that are top of mind in almost every conversation we have. The first is, how can we ensure users can stay productive, have the same experience and ability to do the same work that they're used to doing every day in the office? Security and compliance are always top of mind for our partners, and I have a slide that touches on that. The other thing that partners talk about is how to scale up and down as needed and manage network utilization and the data center usage and costs. So Windows Virtual Desktop is designed to address these needs. To address productivity, there are clients for Windows Virtual Desktop service on every major client platform, Windows, Mac, Linux, etc., which gives them a rich Windows 10 client. Microsoft have also focused on a quick start to deploy Windows Virtual Desktop using Azure DevOps pipeline to get the resources up and running really quickly. I can share a link with you how to. It's basically aka.ms WVD quick start. You'll be able to run through a quick start demo of how to automate the deployment of Windows Virtual Desktop. There's also a rich ecosystem of partners to help migrate from on-prem VDI and modernize the deployment in the process. So here's a quick look at the rich ecosystem of partners. This slide has a few of the partners that work with Microsoft and Windows Virtual Desktop. The majority of system integrators around the world have started to deploy Windows Virtual Desktop on behalf of their customers. Many of them are building specific practices around the service, which is driven by customer interest and momentum. There are ISVs bringing their expertise into the VDI space, and we'll have a look at one of those later in the event. And you'll notice Nerdio on there. Ingram actually partner with Nerdio. And also Nigel, who was the first to market about a year ago with their thin client for Windows Virtual Desktop. So a lot of partners ask us how they can use the familiar tools they already have for Citrix, VMware in the move to Windows Virtual Desktop. Well, Citrix and VMware are two of Microsoft's strongest partnerships with the service, and Microsoft have seen that customers recognize the value of having these partners hosting their services on Azure. Microsoft have also built out their own control plane, which was driven by customer demand for a first-party solution where customers want to simplify and reduce costs. So with Windows Virtual Desktop, you get access to a full Windows 10 desktop. You can publish applications, whether they are line of business apps or third-party applications, and access them remotely. You can focus on what's specific to your organization's deployment. So you set up your policies, VMs, networks, config, and users, and that's what you focus on. You don't need to spend any time worrying about the underlying infrastructure, such as connection brokers or maintaining server VMs to power the service. Microsoft handles the complexity of running the service in the cloud, so you can focus on what your organization needs for your deployment. So traditional public cloud services offer VDI solutions that map a single user to a single VM. And this may be appropriate for some customers, but a typical virtualization environment has a mix of multi-user and single-user host pools. The primary reason for multi-user host pools is to reduce costs and management overhead. And we all know that a typical task for an office worker rarely consumes the full resources of their desktop. So if you were to provision each user to their peak needs, you'd be paying for a lot of resources that you're not using, which is essentially the white space in this image. So if you consider a real world scenario where you have 24 task workers, and I was to provision VDI instances in the cloud, inefficient use of resources start to create a significant gap between what I'm paying for and what I'm using. So in this case, I'd require 48 virtual CPUs and 96 gig of RAM for my 24 users. Now we know that typical virtualization deployments have pools of identical VMs that host large numbers of users. And you as the IT admin want control over how users are allocated across those VM host pools. Windows Virtual Desktop provides two core load balancing methods to provision users to VMs in the host pool. The first default mode is called breadth mode, which evenly allocates users across available VMs in a host pool. And this helps ensure that users are getting the maximum amount of resources. Microsoft also supports, or Windows Virtual Desktop also supports depth mode, which allocates users to a single virtual machine before allocating users to the next VM. This mode allows you to better control your variable costs, as you can spin up additional VMs as needed using the scaling tools. So this service will dynamically adjust user allocation based on the amount of VMs available. And there are a few scaling templates you can use or modify them to create your own scaling algorithm to meet the needs of your business, essentially. So this is a high-level architecture of Windows Virtual Desktop. And as you can see on the top right, starting at the top, Microsoft will manage the web access, diagnostics, gateway, management, broker, load balancing, and this is the PaaS service I mentioned earlier. So then you would control and decide on such things as what OS, applications, and how you want to access the environment. Microsoft would then manage the underlying virtualization of that IaaS infrastructure, such as the compute, storage, and networking. And this has to be designed to your business specifications, so you'll have input on design considerations such as IP ranges, network address schemas, etc. So a typical enterprise architecture for Windows Virtual Desktop. This has recently been released by Microsoft. So it shows a typical architectural setup for an enterprise Windows Virtual Desktop deployment. The application endpoints are in the customer's on-prem network on the left. ExpressRoute, in this scenario, because it's an enterprise architecture diagram, they've deployed ExpressRoute as connectivity from on-prem into the infrastructure, into Azure, when in reality, even an enterprise organization could potentially get away with a VPN there instead of an ExpressRoute. But that ExpressRoute is extending on-prem into the Azure Cloud, and Azure Active Directory Azure Active Directory Connect, which is on the server on-prem, is basically syncing their on-prem Active Directory with Azure Active Directory. The Windows Virtual Desktop control plane handles web access, gateway, broker, diagnostics, extensibility components like REST APIs, and the customer manages Active Directory domain services and Azure AD. Azure subscriptions, virtual networks, Azure files or Azure NetApp files on the far right, and Windows Virtual Desktop host pools and workspaces. To increase capacity, the customer uses two Azure subscriptions. You can see that there's a subscription 1, Hub, the VNet, and the Spoke is in subscription 2, and they're basically doing a VNet pairing between the two subscriptions to extend the capacity of the host pools. And you can get access to this architecture at that link. So let's have a look at what it looks like for an end user logging into this service. So I've got set up in Azure three host pools. I don't know if it's worth showing you actually. I've got these videos that I've created that are going to pretty much do what I'm going to do live. So let me just try that and see if that works. So I've basically got three host pools set up in Windows Virtual Desktop, one with a Windows 10 multi-session desktop, which are assigned to 3 users, 3 WVD test users. I'm also publishing some applications from this host pool, which are assigned to users 2 and 3. I've got a host pool which contains a personal desktop, which I've assigned to user 1. This VM has Windows 10 single session. And finally, I've got a Windows 7 VM in another host pool. So I'm just going to play the video first. And if it plays all right, I'll just use those rather than actually going into Azure, because I've already pre-recorded this. So it may just work in this demo environment. Let's have a look. So this is it. Hopefully this just plays. Let me play it. And if there's any issues, Nathan, I'm sure you'll let me know with this and I'll just do it live.
Can't hear the sound, mate. Thought that might be an issue.
Okay, sound. That's in the Teams, isn't it? There's an option in Teams to share my sound.
Just jump in the portal, mate. We'll get through it.
Okay, let's do it like that. I'm going to do it live then.
We all love a good live demo.
We do indeed. Okay, let's just get out of there then. And I'll just share my screen again. Am I still sharing?
I can see the PowerPoint at the moment.
Okay, let me stop sharing that. Share that. So you should be able to see Azure now.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I've got are those 3 host pools. This is Windows Virtual Desktop. I've pinned it to my dashboard, which you can do. You can search for the resource in here, just type Windows Virtual Desktop, and it will get you to this tile. So if you go to Windows Virtual Desktop, it brings you to here, and you're ready to start deploying Windows Virtual Desktop for your users. So before I show you what the end user experience looks like, let me just run through what I've got set up in here. So I've got 4 host pools actually. Host pool number 1 has got 2 application groups in there. One of them is a full desktop, which has got Windows 10 multi-session, and it's assigned to 3 users. The other application group has got applications. So that's a desktop application group, and that's an application group. In here, I'm publishing some 6 apps, just Office apps, and those apps are Access Excel Notepad Publisher, those apps there. And like I say, the desktop is publishing a full Windows 10 multi-session desktop, and that's what I'm going to log on to. So that desktop is made up of 2 session hosts, which are 2 virtual machines, been built into a host pool. You can see that there are no active sessions, which resource group they're in, and a little bit of information about them. If I go into the actual session host, which I can do from here, you can see it's not like a standard VM. There's some remote desktop capabilities like sending message to users and logging users off the host and all that. Turn drain mode on and off to allow or disallow new connections to the session host. So a bit of remote desktop capability in there. So that's host pool 1, 2 session hosts for the full desktop, and the applications are being published from those session hosts. So when you publish apps, it looks at the start menu of your session hosts, and you can pick whatever's installed to publish. So that's those 2. In host pool 2, I've got just a full desktop, which is a personal desktop rather than pooled. So this is, I could assign this to a single user. It's not multi-session, it's single session, but still Windows 10. In here, I've got a Windows 7 desktop. It's just a default desktop Windows 7 on, and this is just another multi-session desktop with slightly bigger virtual machines. They're both turned off, these 2. And the virtual machines you can see are just here in my virtual machines. Some of them are running. So these 2 are running. I need to turn my domain controller on, both DCs on, my file server on. So just bear with me while I start these machines. Okay, And so I'll just, while they're starting, I'll run through the environment, which probably is relevant because some of the prerequisites you need to have in place for Windows Virtual Desktop are around the infrastructure. So with that in mind, just let me get my favorites and show my favorites. I'll just run through really quickly the requirements. So yeah, sorry. This is the documentation for Windows Virtual Desktop. Down at the bottom, you can go to the overview, and down here are the requirements to deploy the solution. Licensing requirements are here, so M365, but more importantly, and what I want to run through is the infrastructure requirements. So infrastructure needs to be set up like this. You need to have Azure Active Directory. So if you've got Office 365 or M365, you have an Azure tenant and you've got Azure Active Directory, so that's fine. These licensing, of course, and they're per user. And then you have to have a Windows Server Active Directory, which is in sync with Azure Active Directory, and you use Azure AD Connect to do that. That's one option. So in my environment, that domain controller that I've just spun up is over here. I'll just connect to my machines with remote desktop connection, add them, and they should be nearly ready to log on to, starting up. And it's basically just a normal on-prem infrastructure with domain services running. So these are up and running now. Domain controllers up, file servers up. This is the prod host pool 4. That's the personal desktop, and that's the Windows 7 desktop. They're turned off, but I'll show you what they look like for a user who sees them when they subscribe to the service. But when I get onto this domain controller, so I can just, there you go. So they're ready to log on to. That's the file server logging on as a domain controller, and I've just set up the default credentials. I've saved the public IP addresses, reserved them. Oh, look at that. GCO1 wants password change. Typical. Always the way on a demo, so bear with me. Okay, so that's the domain controller, the file server. So this is where I've got Azure AD Connect installed. So this is synchronizing my on-prem domain. So imagine this is on-prem. It's a simulated on-prem environment. These are Azure VMs, but it's just a DC with a file server. Okay, so the file server, best practice is not to install Azure AD Connect on a domain controller. So I've installed it on a file server. And there's also a little bit of config for the user profiles, which I've set up on here. So this folder here, Windows Virtual Desktop User Profiles, is a share that I've just created. And in here, you'll see some user profiles. And what they are, there's my 3 Windows Virtual Desktop users, and it's just a hard disk image for each user. And to set these up with FS Logics in this documentation, when you're creating profile containers, there are 4 methods, and this is the one I'm using. Use a VM-based file share. So to create a VM and run through this bit of config, basically create share, set this in the registry, and install FS Logics. And that's the user profile setup. So the domain controller, which is now up and running. So here's my users. So this is my on-prem domain. It's called onprem.com, funnily enough. And I've just created these a few users in here, WVD users I'm using for the purpose of this. And these 3 users here essentially have been synchronized using that Azure AD Connect into my Azure Active Directory. And they'll all appear in my users. So they'll be in here. WVD 1, 2, and 3. You can see where my loyalties lie with my demo users there. So now that's the service. Here's Windows Virtual Desktop. Here's my host pools. And I'm now going to log into this multi-session Windows 10 session host or host pool that consists of 2 session hosts. So in order to log in, what you need to do, again, you would come to the documentation and connect into the virtual desktop resources with the Windows desktop client. So there's two methods to connect. One is a desktop client, and you download and install this remote desktop. And this is the download for it here. And then what you're going to do is add a workspace. And I didn't point out the workspaces. So each of my host pools is in a workspace. So these workspaces here, workspace 1, 2, 3, and 4, each have the application groups for their corresponding host pool. 1 is in workspace 1, and it's just an association. It's almost a container. And in the old version, it would have been, you could liken workspaces to a tenant in the old Windows Virtual Desktop, if you're familiar with that. But connecting to the service, you download the client, and then you go to this address here, Windows Virtual Desktop. So you take this feed discovery address, which is rdweb.wvd.microsoft.com, and then they've introduced this new ARM, Azure Resource Manager, into the title, which represents the 2020 Spring Update. So in the remote desktop client, if I go to that feed discovery address, I'm going to go there and subscribe to the service. So this is using what's called reverse connect. So there's no ports, no RDP ports. 3389 is closed on my session host. And because I'm subscribing to this service, what's actually happening is I'm authenticating against Azure Active Directory. So my user 1 will just put his address in, log in with him, and you see what he sees. So he has been assigned to all of the host pools. I'll just run through actually and show you what he sees, and then show you how he's got access to those. So this is him logged in. This is what he sees. So this is workspace 1, workspace 2, workspace 3, and workspace 4, or host pool, but they're in workspaces. And in host pool 1, remember, we've got 2 application groups, which are, this is an application group with those applications, and this is an application group. So this is the Windows 10 multi-session desktop. I'll just click on it, and with this new remote desktop tool, you can add your users up front, which I've done. You can see here, on-prem, and they're using my on-prem credentials now. So my on-prem domain /username, and that is being configured in Azure AD Connect single sign-on. So I can pass through my on-prem credentials, which are not working. So that's him logging in. He gets a window for Windows 10, and he's on the multi-session, and he'll hit one of my 2 session hosts in the host pool. So while he's doing that, let me get the browser and log in with user 2. I'll just show you the assignment in here. So the application groups is where you assign users. It's really simple. You go into assignments and just add. And because my users are in Azure Active Directory, I can add anybody who's in my Azure Active Directory.
I've got a quick question for you, Nigel.
Yeah,
if you go back to those sessions a second ago, the other one,
so that
workspaces, I'll show you.
Yes.
So these are 4 different workspaces that you've presented to this particular user. Could you put those users in different groups and only present certain ones to them? So you could limit them based on, say, business unit, for example.
So let's log in with user 2, and let's see. I think I'll answer your question if I go in with user 2, because he doesn't have access to everything. They've all got different access. So you can see that you can assign just a single app to a single user, a full desktop to a single user. You can a shared desktop to a single user, or just literally anything to anyone. So this user 2, has only got access to workspace 1. So he doesn't see workspace 2 or 3, but he can see the apps. So that's user 2. If I log on here with him, you'll see 2 users logged on. And because of that load balancing algorithm that's in place, the default on mine is breadth first. So if you look at my desktop application group, the properties of it, of the host pool, sorry, you'll see the load balancing is breadth first. And that breadth first means that each time a user logs on, the next user will hit a different box. So where's my browser? I've lost my window. User 2 is in there. I've got a browser, so that's user 1. That's his Windows 10. Hang on, sorry, mate. Oh yeah, here we go. So this is user 2 logging into the Windows 10 box. It's user 2. Spare me a sec, sorry. We've got these credentials. I'm just cut and pasting. On-prem, just copy that one. Spare me a sec. User 2. And so he should essentially hit the other session host. If I'm on VM1 here, see Teams is installed there. Let's just check what user 1 is on. Just to show the load balancing working. So he's on VM1. This guy, this should be VM2. Well, it will be VM2 because of the load balancing method. And while that's going in, I'll quickly show you, let's see, user 3, who has access to something slightly different again. So I'll just go into Computer and take that address there. And quickly go in as user 3, user 1. So that's user 2, and you can see in a browser experience, they get a tab separate. So my resources, my Windows 10 box, and there's loads of RDP settings, so it'll size with me, things like that. I'm just going to go in here as user 3. And put his password in. There's there. And I think this user doesn't see the apps, but just sees the desktop. See, it's just kind of showing that you can assign, so it only sees workspace 1 and just the desktop only. So user 1 sees pretty much everything that I've got published. So you can log onto that personal desktop and that, all at the same time, and that. And this guy can just get onto this shared multi-session desktop that my other 2 users are on. So I'll show you him logging on as user 3, and you'll just see they still have a fairly good user experience with 3 users logging on. They're only small VMs, these. It's a B2MS, I think, which is, it's small.
So if I've got access to certain, like just a certain amount of applications, if I'm running Windows 10 locally, I can pin those to my desktop, to my start menu, so I don't have to log in all the time.
Absolutely, and I think that's a new feature that's just recently been released. So he's on VM0. He's on VM1. Yeah, so I'll show you that, where you just pin them to your start menu. I think it's going to be on VM1 as well. Yeah. So this guy on VM1, you can see this is Windows 10, but I can see like a normal server RDS solution. I've got multiple users logged on. You can see the CPU utilization performance. It's not bad. These are relatively small VMs. So obviously you'd scale it for the size of your environment, but it just gives you a bit of an overview and insight into the capabilities. On this particular session host, I've installed Teams, so all my users can just share and use Teams and Teams each other, because there have been some improvements around Teams as well, AV integration. I'm sorry, AV redirection. So normally in a team session in Windows Virtual Desktop, a dialing communication session, what happens is the traffic is routed between the virtual machines, and in the new AV redirection, there's now a point-to-point connection, which uses WebRTC, which is a more efficient way to offers more of a more user experience, better user experience, and better performance as well. It's going to reduce the load on the CPU as well in that session. So all users who are doing calling, collaboration are going to get a great user experience with the new Teams AV redirection. So yeah, I think that's 3 users all on different machines. Oh well, 2 on one and 1 on another. So load balancing kicking in. They're all happily working away, sharing information, and have a good experience. So these typically could be my 3 users now. I've been sent home. My on-prem office is shut down, and I've just given these guys a link to download remote desktop, or given them a link in a browser and told them what to log on with, given them credentials and said, just log on to this Windows 10 and just carry on working as normal. I might install whatever software I need on my session hosts, available for my users when they log into the service, essentially. So that's my users logging in live rather than my videos. And I hope that's gives you a bit of an insight. I can switch back to my deck if you want and just finish off with some more slides. I've probably got another, well, as long as you need.
I mean, I'm quite happy with what you've gone through, to be perfectly honest with you, Nigel.
Okay.
It's completely up to you if you want to go back to your slides or not.
You
don't have to.
Let's see, I've got about another. It's just really a high level. Let me just share you on the screen.
Yeah, go for
easier.
it. Go for it.
So this is the deck. I'll just run through quickly. You've seen most of it now. So the deployment, we've seen that. That was the deployment video, and then that one. So these are just some links where you get access to the service. Landing page. I guess we're going to share these, Nathan, these decks with attendees.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
we'll put them on the YouTube video.
Right. So some great links there that we'll run through. So this one's probably useful. So Microsoft are focused on 3 dimensions on how you can reduce cost and spend with Windows Virtual Desktop. And probably some of these areas you'll find that there are questions on. So you can make huge savings on the underlying infrastructure, which is already an efficient, scalable compute, storage, and networking cloud infrastructure that you can build on. Azure also provides tools to let you manage the utilization of the infrastructure, whether it's scaling up and down, auto shutting down VMs, or using multi-session in Windows Virtual Desktop, which lets you have scalability of Windows Server session hosts with a user experience you'd expect from a Windows 10 client. You can save on licensing costs because access to Windows Virtual Desktop is included with your M365 A3, A5 or E3 or E5 licenses or Business Premium, which saves on RDS CALs. And the total cost of ownership goes down because you don't have to spend on your IT department's energy and looking at gateways, brokers, infrastructure, VMs, patching those VMs, or doing any of the work to keep that infrastructure up and running. Some of the simplified management, which I won't run through, we've seen some of that in the portal. And there are some recent updates, but I think, to be honest, I think we've seen enough of the 2020 spring update. The new updates of what we've kind of demoed are a real kind of high level insight into the service and how Microsoft have made leaps and bounds with some of the updates using the management from within the portal. And lots of stuff on identity, end-to-end security for your virtual desktop. So identity, conditional access, MFA, multi-factor authentication, which I've deployed in my session host, Defender ATP. You can see there, I won't read them out to you, but some all around security and how to get the best from the best use of the service and how to make sure it's secure and reliable for your customers. One update that is probably worth mentioning, the AV redirect, that gives you that optimal Teams experience, and I touched on the performance that you get increase with Teams. So I just want to kind of show these couple of slides that show the communication. This is a typical communication between clients in a Windows Virtual Desktop setup where the traffic is routed between the VMs, and then with AV redirect in place, there's a point-to-point connection. And this slide kind of shows the performance optimization when the AV redirect has been with a session. So this is basically two sessions, two screenshots of Task Manager, one running without AV redirection and one running with the Teams optimization that takes advantage of AV redirection. You can see that there's a reduction from 12% CPU to 1.5% CPU, which is a huge reduction. It goes right down to the VM density you're able to pack into your virtual machine, which is a huge cost saving if you have users doing a lot of calling and collaboration, for example. And the final thing that I want to show, which is going to be another huge cost saving. These are some of the updates that I'm going to run through in future webinars here at Ingram, but I think it's worth pointing out this cost saving one at the bottom. It's a bit of lots of people have been asking for it basically, and Microsoft are bringing this in before the end of the year. There will be this feature that you can see here where you can start a VM on Connect. So essentially, when you have got your virtual machines, if I show, I'm just going to, that's actually the last slide. So if I just show you what I'm talking about in my session hosts, just let me get out of here, bear with me a sec. I'll just actually show you that last bit. So in my, so this is my host pool, and these are my two session hosts, my Windows 10 that all my users are logged onto, these two VMs, VM 0 and 1. But for me, as an IT admin, I'm concerned about costs and I want to manage these costs. So I can, on these virtual machines, there's a couple of things I can do. I can actually go to the virtual machine itself and say that I want to auto shut down this virtual machine and set a time to shut it down, send me an alert, whatever, if I want one, but basically turn the machine off and make sure I'm saving costs on doing that. Turn it, I'll say 9 to 5, finish at 5, maybe I turn them off at 7 o'clock. However, if I turn them off and then one of my users decides to do some work during the night, or that machine's turned off and it's not going to be a good experience for my user. So this capability will mean I can turn them off, and if I'd set time, and then if my users connect, the machine will just start, the VM will start on that connect, which is again another huge cost saving, which I'm looking forward to demoing actually and seeing how that works. So with that is me. I am Nigel Mullings. As I said, there's my contact details. And yeah, anything around Azure and Windows Virtual Desktop or Azure generally, I'm your guy. Hope you enjoyed it and found it useful.
Thank you very much for that, Nigel. Really appreciated. And it's good to go through Windows Virtual Desktop. Yeah, there's a few questions around FS Logics, which I know Aaron was asking separately. But yeah,
okay.
Thank you very much for that. It's all right, I've answered them.
Okay,
about synchronizing OneDrive and stuff like that. So yeah,
okay.
that's already been taken care of. So thank you very much for that, Nigel. Really appreciated.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Tuck back into that beer now, and
yeah.
And on that note, though, there is one thing which actually got released 6 days ago, and that's in regards to Azure Advisor adding a new is it a performance metric which is deploying virtual machines closer to the Windows Virtual Desktop deployment location for close proximity groups. So that's just something to be aware of that Microsoft have put into the Azure Advisor when it comes to Windows Virtual Desktop. So just another little one there. On that note, though, what I'm now going to do is hand over to Nick if you're around, and and available. There he is. Lovely, jubbly.
Yeah.
Not too many
There he
beers
goes.
yet. So
No.
I'm going to go mute.
on that, then I'm going to hand over to yourself, Nick, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's cool, Nathan. Yeah, and thanks, Nigel. That was really great presentation. I don't have any slides to show anyone, but I do have a demo of Cloudmaker that I'm going to take everyone through. And yeah, hopefully there's some questions at the end, and we can spend some time doing a Q&A as well, because that'll help me hit the 45-minute mark. So I'm going to share my screen, and then I'll tell you a little bit about me and a little bit about Cloudmaker and how we came about. So I'm Nick Smith. I'm the CEO of Cloudmaker. I previously co-founded a cloud services company called Extrinsica Global. That was around 15 years ago. And they are now one of the leading cloud services companies in the UK, doing some really innovative things. And during my time building Extrinsica Global, learned a whole bunch of lessons about how to build complex cloud solutions. And really, it was during the building of that business that the idea for Cloudmaker came about. We built the seed of this product in that business, and then spun out of Extrinsica Global into our own company. And for the last 2 years, I've been 100% focused on building out the Cloudmaker product. So I guess the first place to start is kind of explaining what the problem is that we're trying to solve, and what the problem is that we found when we were building that cloud services company. So as I'm sure many of you may have experienced yourselves working with the hyperscale cloud and things like Microsoft Azure, it's hugely complex, a lot of moving parts, and really in order to deploy hyperscale cloud at scale, you really need to have to adopt things like infrastructure as code and optionally things like DevOps practices to be able to deploy that infrastructure in a repeatable way and in a manageable way. So the sort of challenges we had were, if I just fire up VS Code, a simple ARM template for Azure is very, very complex. JSON is not the easiest language to understand. There are other code languages out there like Terraform, and obviously Microsoft are developing their new language, Bicep, which is akin to Terraform, which is slightly abstracted from the raw JSON. But ultimately, in order to be able to deploy this at scale, you have to have the skills of a software engineer. You have to be able to know how to write this infrastructure as code, and then ideally have some DevOps skills as well to be able to deliver it through a DevOps pipeline. So this is a tiny Azure firewall template, and you can see it's already running to 400 or 500 lines of code. And we have customers. I think one of our guys told me the other day, we have a customer with a relatively complex environment, and their ARM template would run to something like 7,000, 8,000 lines of JSON. So incredibly complex, as I'm sure you have all experienced trying to write ARM templates and infrastructure as code yourself. So we realized that this was a blocker, an inhibitor to scaling that cloud services company, because really we needed people that were able to write infrastructure as code and adopt infrastructure as code. And it's prone to error, it's complex. So how do we solve this problem? Well, when we analyzed it, what we realized is that every engineer, whether you're a data center engineer or whether you're a software engineer, every engineer starts their journey by drawing a diagram. And traditionally that might be in Microsoft Visio, might be in Lucidchart, or any drawing package that you might want to choose. And then once you've designed your solution that you want to deploy, you either try and wrestle with the JSON and write the infrastructure as code yourself, or maybe you take it to your DevOps and infrastructure as code team who convert that to infrastructure as code for you. So we realized if we could enable people to draw a diagram and let the machine do all of the heavy lifting of converting that to infrastructure as code and deploying it to the cloud automatically, we could solve a massive problem that exists in the industry today. And that's really where Cloudmaker comes in. So what you can see here is I'm on the Cloudmaker, what we call the Cloudmaker Blueprint Library. So really this is a shared repository of cloud architecture designs that myself and other engineers have been working on. And I can either choose an architecture that I have done or one of my team has done, or I can start a new blueprint. I'm going to jump into a new blueprint just to show you some of the drawing dynamics of Cloudmaker. So the first thing you see when you land on Cloudmaker is a drawing surface in the middle, your cloud resources on the left, and you have a configuration panel, properties panel on the right. And we built some machine learning into Cloudmaker as well. So as we build out our product, as we gain more experience, we'll be adding in additional machine learning algorithms into the product. And really the idea is it's assistive AI designed to guide engineers to a successful outcome. So the first piece we have here is a suggestion engine. It's a little bit like, I guess, your Amazon shopping suggestion engine, suggesting you things that you might like to buy based on other people's behaviors and recommendations. We've trained this machine learning model on millions of permutations of Azure ARM templates. And when I start designing my solution, so I drag a Azure resource group onto the surface, you can see my suggestions start to update, and it's starting to hand me the next resource it thinks I might want for my solution design. If the suggestions are not what you want, then clearly you can start drilling into all of the services that exist on Microsoft Azure, or you can use our search functionality to find exactly the service that you're looking for. And it's worth pointing out at this point that we've built an automation engine under the hood that essentially takes the schema of the cloud provider and ingests that into Cloudmaker. So the idea being is that one of the challenges of building a product like Cloudmaker is how do you stay up to date with all the changes that occur, the rate of change that Microsoft have, for instance, with updating resources, adding new services into things like Azure. We built an automation engine that can scan that schema, ingest those resources, and update the resources and present new resources within Cloudmaker in a very, very quick fashion. So there's very little lag between updates on Azure and those services appearing in Cloudmaker. So I've dragged my resource group onto the drawing surface. I can resize it with the drawing resize corners here on the resource group. And then I can just start dragging and dropping, say, my virtual network. I can drag a subnet in. And as I start dragging the resources onto the surface, you can see that we get these kind of little hints as we go. So it's highlighting the VNet. It's suggesting that this is the area where I want to drop my subnet into. And that seems like a good place to me. I can grab a virtual machine, and again, you can see it's highlighting and showing me that that's a good place to drop the virtual machine. And you go ahead and build any complexity of architecture that you want. Whatever you would normally do traditionally in something like Microsoft Visio, you can obviously do in Cloudmaker. And we have some tools at the top here that let us pan out and see the entire solution. So when we're happy with what we've drawn, what we can do is we can go ahead and configure it. And the helpful properties panel here on the right lets us do all of that configuration. So I can enter in just hard-coded values in here. I can choose a location for this resource group, wherever I want to deploy these resources. But what's more powerful is I can actually use parameters. So I can convert these values to parameters, and I can start laying down parameters within my design, which I can then enter the parameter values for later. And the power of this is that this design then becomes reusable. So I can now do a design for one project and then deploy it for a second project, just adjusting the parameter values very easily. So I'm just going to jump out of this design. I'm going to jump into one that I've already done, which is my Azure Firewall solution here. So the Azure Firewall architecture here, this is based on a Microsoft tutorial they have on Microsoft Docs. And really, this is the precursor to a hub and spoke architecture, which underpins many of the solutions that you might see on Microsoft Azure. So you can see I've drawn it visually, very simple to drag and drop. I've added annotations, so we have an annotation tool, so I can start mapping out in text exactly what each part of my solution looks like. When I'm happy, I can actually export this solution. So I can choose my image format, and I can export this, and it downloads an image, and then I can use this image within a technical document or a PowerPoint presentation, or whatever it is that you want to use this architecture image for. But then more importantly, once I've configured this design, which you can see I've done in the Azure Firewall design here, apologies, let me just refresh. my magic mouse on my Mac has a mind of its own. It tends to zoom in, which is quite crazy. There we go. Cool. So just jump back. So you can see I've configured my design. I'm happy with my configuration. We can save the design, and then we can publish our design. So the distinction between these two things are obviously saving it. I'm ready to save the work that I've done, but I'm not ready to actually deploy this solution yet. And I don't want to make this solution available to anyone else in my team to deploy yet. I just want it to be a saved architecture diagram with some configuration, but not yet deployable. And then the publish button, this is when I'm ready to put this design out into the Cloudmaker deployment feed, and other engineers can then take this design and deploy it to the cloud. So publishing is as simple as clicking that button. And what we also have in Cloudmaker is this idea of version history. So what we're trying to do with Cloudmaker is bring all of the advantages of software engineering tooling, so things like version history, being able to create code quickly. We're trying to bring all of those capabilities to Cloudmaker. So in our version history, you can see that we've got the history of this design and the different iterations, and we can go back in time and recover this design if we want to. So this is great if, for instance, I have a known good version of this solution, I've iterated it over time, and I've broken something, I can quickly restore a previous version that's known good, and I can then redeploy that to the cloud. So how do we deploy this this design to the cloud? Well, we have three options for doing that, and the first option is simply a code export. So Cloudmaker, under the hood, as you're drawing and you're configuring, is actually writing the infrastructure as code for you. So if I just enter any old name in here, and you can see that I get a zip file that opens. And let us unpack. And in here, you can see the template. It's the same template that I showed you, the Azure firewall template. So Cloudmaker's done all of the heavy lifting. You've designed it visually. You've entered your configuration in visually, and Cloudmaker's exported the ARM code for you. You can now go and take this, throw it at Azure, deploy this as your firewall solution. So that would be our low-code path that you can take within Cloudmaker. But we have some other options that we think are more powerful. So if I just head back to the Blueprint library, you can see that I have this area called pipelines. And if I hit pipelines, I have a couple of pipelines that I've already created. I'm going to jump into my Azure firewall pipeline. And you can see here on my dashboard that I've got a single stage of a pipeline set up already. I had a bit of trouble when I first deployed it. And if we look in here, we get the error logs up, and it tells us why it failed. So we had an issue with the SQL database, the name not being unique, and it failed. That's fair enough. So headed back into the Blueprint, edited the configuration. Edit the configuration of my pipeline. You can see here my parameters, and on the right-hand side here are my parameter values. And as I mentioned, this is where it becomes very powerful, because I can reuse this Blueprint with another pipeline, add in different parameter values, and it becomes a reusable thing that I can use time and time again. And also where it becomes super powerful is I've selected my Azure Firewall Blueprint. I've selected the latest version of that Blueprint. I want to deploy it directly to Microsoft Azure. And what I want to do now is add additional stages. So what I can do, for instance, is I've got a dev stage, but now I want to have a prod stage. I'm going to skip my test stage, but you could add any number of stages that you want into here. I'm connecting it to Azure via service connection, and then it's as simple as adding in the parameter value. So I'm just going to do that super quick. Cool. And when we've entered our parameter values, all we need to do is save our solution. The one thing I want to point out before I do this is you'll note that I've actually enabled deletions here within my pipeline. So this is a really powerful feature that we built into Cloudmaker. So with traditional infrastructure as code, really there's no idea, there's no kind of concept in ARM at least. In Terraform, I believe there is a concept of state, but in Microsoft ARM code, there's no real concept of state of your deployment. So if you renamed a resource or you wanted to remove a resource from your solution, you'd have to go to the CLI or into the Azure portal, remove those resources, and then redeploy your infrastructure as code template. With Cloudmaker, it understands what's already been deployed to the cloud. It understands what's changed within your blueprint inside your solution, and then it will affect those changes once you deploy this pipeline. So if you've removed, say, a server from your design, Cloudmaker will go and remove that server as part of the deployment process. So deletions is a super powerful feature that has a concept of state, and it can remove resources automatically for you that you no longer need in your design. So I'm going to save this this pipeline, and you can see now that I've got a new stage for prod. And with a direct deployment in Cloudmaker, it's as simple as hitting deploy. And what will happen now is Cloudmaker will reach out via that service connection to my subscription in Azure. It will create the resource group, and it will deploy all of the resources that I have specified in my blueprint. So while it's working on that in the background, let me just show you the other path that we have. So here's another blueprint, and Azure App Service. A very simple design. So this is a very basic website using Microsoft App Service and SQL backend. And again, you can see I've configured it. I've hard-coded most of my values in this solution. I've got a few parameters. I've saved and I've published this blueprint. And now if I go back to my pipelines, you'll see I've got my web app platform here. And this time you'll note that I don't have a deploy button on this dev tile. And if I jump into my configuration, you'll see that's because I've selected the Azure DevOps deployment mode. So I've chosen my Azure App Service blueprint. Again, I'm using the latest published version. Yeah, this is super useful if I'm making changes to my design and I'm publishing it. I don't need to come back in here again and choose the next version. I can just stick this on latest, and it will always pick up the latest version of my design. Deletions are enabled. I've entered my parameter values. And if I just save this real quick, as I say, you notice I don't have the deploy button here, but if I head over to Azure DevOps, and some of you may use Azure DevOps, so hopefully this will be familiar to some of you, but you can see here I've got my releases, and if I edit my release, I've got a single stage set up in Azure DevOps called dev, and that mirrors what I have in Cloudmaker. So it's my dev stage. And if I edit the tasks in this DevOps stage, you can see that I've got a Cloudmaker custom task, and this connects directly to Cloudmaker. I choose the pipeline that I want to connect to. I choose my subscription, I choose metadata location. And the power of integrating with Azure DevOps is I can now add additional tasks to my pipeline. So it's not just the infrastructure. In this instance, I want to deploy some application code. So I have another task here that actually goes and deploys some HTML to my app service once the infrastructure is deployed. So if I just head back to my releases, so I have a couple of options here. I can manually create a release here within Azure DevOps, and it will go ahead and it'll pull down my infrastructure. It will deploy that and then deploy my app code. But being an app developer, or being an organization where I have app developers that want to deploy their code to the cloud, I'm going to open VS Code again. And you can see here I've got a very basic website. This is the Cloudmaker reference architecture website I've been spending months and months working on. And I've just made some edits to my web app here. And then what I want to do is I want to commit and push these changes to my code repository. And I want these to automatically deploy to the cloud with the Cloudmaker designed infrastructure deploying as well at the same time. So if I just commit this to my repository, what we will see, hopefully, all being well, it's a live demo, fingers crossed, is we get a new release. So here's release 31. If we jump into that, it's queued up, and we should hopefully see, depending on what else is queued, that the deployment begins. And because I've already deployed this website, you can see, here it is with the existing configuration. I've made some changes, so all being well, once this deployment finishes, we should see an update to this website. And what is happening in the background, as you can see, it's deploying the cloud infrastructure underneath. It's pulling that infrastructure down from Cloudmaker. So any changes that I've made to the design, it's pulling down and deploying those. And then as the fourth task in this process, it will be deploying the app code that I've just updated. And we should see that in a moment. And while that's running, you can also see that the task that we've created in Azure DevOps also feeds back to Cloudmaker. So we have a single pane of glass really here, so we can see what's happening within the Cloudmaker app, even though we're actually deploying this using a third-party application with Azure DevOps. And we can view the log information. So currently deploying, we can, if we have a failure, if I click this one, we can see the failure information that's come back, which makes it pretty straightforward to kind of troubleshoot exactly why this has failed. And yeah, that will take a couple of minutes to deploy. So if anyone's got any questions, I can answer those and then refresh my web app to show you the finished deployment at the end. So yeah, that is an overview of Cloudmaker, a rapid demo of some of the features. We're currently, we've just launched on our website, but we're also partnered with Ingram Micro. So we're doing a lot of really good work with Ingram Micro. So they're really the two channels that you can engage with Cloudmaker, either directly through our website, or if you have a partnership with Ingram Micro, through the Ingram Micro channel as well. Yeah, so happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
I've got one, Nick. Is the pricing for this public? Yep. Is it, or do I need to?
Yeah, it's on our website. So we have, so the features I've just shown you. So we have two plans. We have we have two plans currently and a third on its way. The plan I've just shown you is our deploy plan, and that's priced at £79 per user per month. And then we also have a free plan, which is just for drawing up to 3 users, and it only gives you the drawing features. And we have a design plan that's coming that enables you to diagram with larger teams, add your configuration and export that to a design document essentially, but no deployment features. The deployment features are in our deploy plan.
Cool, excellent. All right. I see this is quite useful for the stuff I do. That's all.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so it's all on our website, and if you have any questions after this, obviously you can connect with Nathan and the guys, or just shoot me a message. Yeah, I'm the person monitoring. So on our website and in app, I'm the guy pretty much every day keeping tabs on the messages that are coming through here. Myself and my co-founder Alex, and we have a team of a couple of people also monitoring this, but I keep my eye kind of firmly on there as well. So if you have any questions, like I say, there's a couple of options there in terms of reaching out, and I'm happy to kind of engage and answer those questions.
I've got a quick question, Nick, but it's actually not for you.
Okay.
But it does emphasise a point. It's actually for if he's still awake and not drank too much beer. It's actually for John Cave if he's there.
Is this a test to see if we've actually got people on the line?
No, I know. It's a bit of a
yeah, I'm here, mate. Yeah.
So myself and Matt used to create loads of diagrams for our customers when we used to work together. If we had a tool like this to be able to just create those technical diagrams and then immediately be able to deploy them, what kind of value do you think that would be able to offer the company that we were working for at the time?
It's 8:10, Nathan.
I've had a couple of beers myself, so
yeah, I mean, I guess it's speed of deployment, isn't it, and repeatability. So the fact you can template and similar would help as well. So it would have to be deployed as a consistent standard across our operations globally, but I can definitely see a fit. The product's evolved, I think, since I looked at it about a year ago. It seems to have, the interface seems to have improved. So
yeah, we've added a lot of new features to Cloudmaker. And we launched our deploy plan kind of publicly about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So, the features I've just shown you are pretty new, actually. Been obviously working with Ingram behind the scenes on some of those features, but kind of publicly talking about them now. That's only been in the last few weeks, really.
Nathan, in all seriousness, it's probably something to revisit with Craig, given he now has a couple of cloud architects working for him.
Yeah, no problem. I'll pick that up tomorrow with John. On another note, though, I do have another question for you, Nick. What about collaboration with either external users or other companies, that kind of stuff? Because when you're engaged with a customer, and sometimes they've got their own IT department, they want to be involved in that kind of sketching out and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So Cloudmaker is geared up. It's geared up as an N-tier product. So we anticipate MSP partners that we work with and service provider partners that we work with that will essentially use Cloudmaker for their own uses, but will also then be able to resell it to their customers and collaborate with their customers as well. So we actually already see that scenario in practice. So we have something like over 350 Microsoft engineers themselves actually using Cloudmaker already, and we saw spoke to a team out in the US who have been using it in a really interesting way. So the Microsoft CSU engineers are designing solutions, and then they're inviting their customers to basically collaborate with them on those solutions. So we kind of see it working in that mode as well. We have a number of MSPs that we're talking to at the moment, and really the plan is to expand a partner program where we have kind of accredited, qualified Cloudmaker implementation partners that can go and deliver this to end customers essentially. Does that answer your question, Nathan?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate
that. So yeah, I mean, if there are any MSPs on the call, happy to have a conversation about that kind of way of working. Our partner program isn't officially live yet, but we're already working with MSPs on that kind of model.
Just wondering, Nick, question here from Connor, Nick.
Yeah.
Hiya. Just a quick question on, is this something that you'd list or looking to list on AppSource for people to then access?
So this is already in the Azure Marketplace. We're not listed as a transaction partner. It's only listed as a free trial, I think. So the next step for us is to integrate with Microsoft's provisioning APIs, essentially, so that people can go through the Azure Marketplace and provision it that way. And we're also integrated with the Ingram Cloud Marketplace as well.
Brilliant. Sounds good.
Yeah, and you can see as well, like just to finish off the demo, there's my new Mega Azure firewall. That's the change that I made on this website, and you can see that the pipeline succeeded, and we should see it in Cloudmaker as well with the web app platform. So success is completed. So yeah, you can see that we're giving people numbers of options for deployment, whether it's code export, if that's all you're interested in, you want to get the ARM template super quick. Move on from there, whether it's deploying directly to Azure because you don't have or don't need DevOps tooling and practices, or if you're doing more complex things, integrating with DevOps tooling. So today we're integrating with Azure DevOps, but we have plans to integrate with things like GitHub Enterprise, Jenkins, and other CI/CD platforms essentially. So yeah, thanks everyone for taking the time to listen to me take you through Cloudmaker. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, Nick. Really thanks for rocking up and giving us a demo of Cloudmaker. Yeah, you know what I think of the product anyway. It'll be good to kind of explore some other options with other people outside and bring them in and get them on board really at some point in the future. But yeah, thanks for taking us through that. Really appreciate it. But that's the end of the session for this this month, to be perfectly honest. So I'm going to go and sink into my third beer. I need them after listening to Nigel. So unless anybody has any further questions, I think what we'll do is we'll leave it there. And yeah, if you need any of us for anything, just obviously feel free to reach out.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Thank you, Nigel, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
I've already
Good.
messaged my boss, Nick. Expect a call this week.
Okay, cool. That's great.
I think there's certainly a couple of use cases where we'll use this internally.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so yeah, look forward to kind of talking to anyone that wants to talk about Cloudmaker, obviously, and yeah, anyone that wants to just talk cloud in general. You know, obviously, I'm a massive cloud geek. Lots of scars and burns from working in the cloud industry. So yeah, it's been great to thanks for the invite, Nathan. Really, it's been great to have the opportunity to talk in a group like this, and yeah, I'm always happy to chat to anyone kind of outside of the Cloudmaker product itself as well.
Yeah, sounds good. I guess Nick as well. Nathan's mentioned the summit next October, and he's lining you up for a session there, I hope.
Yeah, Nathan mentioned it. Yeah, so that sounds really exciting as well. So that's cool.
You have a big audience.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that's cool. That's great.
Cool. Well, on that note, everybody, well, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Again, if you need anything, feel free to reach out to any of us. And yeah, we'll see you at the next one. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks all.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.